I think even to this day with social media, a lot of people think it's a more lucrative profession than it is, or that is, fancy, like, oh, those Hollywood people. So
Yes.
it's people look at it as like, oh, you're living your dream, or you're doing this, or oh, you're so Hollywood. Um, but really, you're kind of just on the ground grinding, just like anyone would be in a factory. The first time I was offered a six-figure salary to do a movie, the producer spoke about casting a 13, 14-year-old in a sexual manner. I did not take that job. That movie, to my knowledge, has not been made. I
Hmm.
think a lot of it is really making these hard decisions.
Hello and welcome to Ego is Here. Today I'm joined by filmmaker Brandon Slagle to explore his creative journey and life in filmmaking. Hello, Brandon.
Hi, good morning, or good, what is it, evening, or is it afternoon for you?
It's evening. It's almost evening. Yeah, it's
Okay.
7:30.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so good evening.
So, Brandon, you started in music, then moved
Yeah,
into acting and later directing. Did it feel like a natural progression or more like starting from scratch
yeah.
each time?
So the music thing is something that is inherently in me. My mom was a musician, and my I have a stepfather who's passed away some years ago now, who was also a musician who played like the oboe on the Beauty and the Beast, a 1991
Hmm.
movie, Aladdin, Hunchback, Total Recall, all these movies. Like one time I saw his resume and it was just gigantic, and half the movies he didn't even remember working on because a lot of session players, you just bring him in and
Hmm.
you record, and that's it. um so I always had the music in me. I wanted to be a performer or an actor since I can remember, since seeing Star Wars as a kid. So music was kind of a diversion for a while. Like, it's something that's very much in me and a part of me, and I think maybe even my personality may match that a little more. May
Hmm.
match more musicians than filmmakers. But it was kind of an unplanned diversion. Like, I joined a couple of bands, and it ended up becoming this thing that lasted for a number of years. Unfortunately, since we were all very young, that version of that band ultimately didn't work. A lot of it was my drummer Brad and I and whoever else happened to be playing with us at that time. Although luckily, I had a lot of good mentors, like the also deceased Wayne from the band Static X was a very good friend and mentor who, a lot of
Hmm.
things that he taught me, I was probably too immature to really understand about the business at the time. But now these things are very, very relevant. And so I appreciate him, I guess, posthumously. So I guess the lesson of that is, anyone who's willing to dedicate their time to you, please thank them and let
Yes,
them know they
yes.
appreciate it. So once that I I eventually detoured back into acting and eventually filmmaking when I sort of got burned out on acting. And yeah, it's kind of, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, in a way it is kind of like restarting completely. Because even though you may have knowledge in a database of connections, um, I think it's the way that people, especially in America, compartmentalize others. It's sort of like a hard reset every time. So even if you are an established actor, musician, whatnot, you unless you're a nepotism child or something, you're always sort of refreshing completely.
Mm, mm, mm. Can you remember the first time you thought, I want to be behind the camera?
I think subconsciously it was often always there, even when I was acting. I used to buy, as many books as I could on filmmaking, and I'm a little older than a lot of people may realize. So, this was pre-internet and pre. You really had to search to find ways to get into whatever field you wanted to get
Mm.
into. So I would buy. Any filmmaking books, anything that I could that was knowledge. And to me it just made sense to learn as much as you can about everything, even if you're just an actor. Learn what the
Mhm.
director of photography is doing, learn what
Of course.
lighting is, um,
Mhm.
learn how to write, learn how, because all of it is part of storytelling, and they go hand in hand. And to me, it just makes perfect sense to understand what the next guy's job is.
Yes, yes. I couldn't agree more. Brandon, do you miss acting?
No.
No.
There have been, I've done a couple of things recently acting wise that are just cameos if,
Mhm.
like the filmmaker is a friend, or, like one recently I wrote a movie with, the actresses Scout Taylor Compton and Daniel Harris from, mostly from the Halloween series,
Mhm.
and, they decided they wanted to kill me, so, not really, but, so they're like, "Hey, Brandon, you wanna come get killed in our movie?" So I did. So little things like that I'm open to, but as far as, like, being, like, a consummate driven, I'm only an actor, I I don't know. I doubt I would do that again.
Mm, mm. So you learned filmmaking by being on set rather than, going to film school.
Yes.
How did that experience shape the way you make movies?
I think that you're able to learn how to think on your feet more. You're able to learn how
Mm,
to move quicker. And also by affiliation, you're able to really learn the business side of it quite a bit because like anytime someone says, "Hey, how do you get into movies or whatever?" I don't necessarily recommend film school. And the reason is because so much of it is based on the savvy or rapport that you have with other people, and
mhm,
knowing the logistics of business and commerce and marketing. So anyone I would say that would ask these things of me, I would always say, um, take you can take film school. It's fine. That's a great way to learn certain. It's a great way to learn the technical side of it, this and that. But also
mhm,
take business, take marketing, take things that really will help you understand how to make something that will ultimately be a product. Um, and I know there's some people that say, be your authentic self, be this, be that. That's great. And you still can, but you have to
mhm,
learn how
mhm.
to put these things in a marketable box so that you can have a career.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part.
And it's not to knock anyone who wants to go to film school or do this. I
Mhm,
went to an intensive for screenwriting. So, everyone has their, um, has their things that work for them. So do what works for you, but also keep these things in mind.
mhm. So, how your experience in front of the camera shaped the way you guide actors
Ooh,
now
that's
as a
good
director?
question. Um, I have been told that I have a way on set to make actors feel comfortable and heard, um, and that this also extends to crew members as well.
Mhm,
So I guess it helped me understand really how to speak with people and make the connection with people and just be able to have that relationship where you're able to understand how each other work and so hopefully get the best out of the performer because of that.
mm. And have you ever had a moment on set where someone's performance, made you see the character in a whole new way?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I really feel like, let's say you're hiring a certain actor, a certain known prolific actor or whatever. You're hiring them for a reason. You're hiring them for what they can bring to that role. So, often like you'll write something or you'll read something and you'll have a certain idea of how things are supposed to play out in your head. But
Mhm,
then you see um the actor actually bring their side to it as well. And uh, people need to remember that these things are always collaborations. There's not like
of
the
course.
director isn't the king. Um,
Mhm.
he's a guide. He's the person steering the ship. Usually, a lot of times these days, it's the producer. Um, but you're hiring these people for a reason, so you need to let them do their job and bring what they bring to these things to your project, to your film.
Mhm.
And that collaboration, I think, gets the best performances.
Yes. So, what usually draws you to a story or a script?
Um, it depends. Sometimes it's I need a job right now. Sometimes it's the experience of working with someone. You know, you get to make new connections and new expand your circle. I personally like to have kind of this balance of action but also nuance, like Elia Kazan style, you know, East of Eden on the waterfront
Mhm.
nuance, which is something that you don't often see, but
Mm,
something that's just part of making a character relatable. Um, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
sometimes,
You know,
yes.
again, these are all products, so you can do the best that you can at the time. Sometimes they'll land better than others. Um, but it's really kind of the experience a lot of times when it isn't money driven. And anyone who says that it's not money driven is lying to you because we all
Yeah.
have bills to pay and mortgages and stuff like that. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's sometimes it will also be the experience of where I'm shooting. I've shot a lot in Southeast Asia, and
Mhm.
these are just like incredible experiences because the people you meet, the crews you work with, and everything are really just another aspect of not just filmmaking but humanity. I love getting to learn about different cultures and people and you know who they've worked with, what their story is. So really,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's it's a number of things, but there always needs to be a paycheck.
So when you start a film, do you see it very clearly from the beginning, or does it evolve as you go?
It really depends on the movie and the team that you have. Some of these you have to do very quickly, and these are often the ones where I say you're doing them because you need a job.
Yes.
You know, I'll always have certain. I have a particular style, a particular filming style, and camera movement and everything that I like to use. So that is always part of it. Like I go into each project with these things in mind. Like I know that, you know, for this moment in the movie, the camera's going to move this way or it's not going to move at all. Um, so there's kind of a an outline of it visually, um, as opposed as far as what is within the movie, like the content. You know, 10 people can read a script, and you'll get 15 different versions of how it should be executed.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, I'm going to put that one on a shirt. Um, so a lot of time it's really um sometimes it can be driven on or based on like completing the job. Like I said, these shorter ones you don't get a lot of time. These are movies that you're higher onto that already have a release date, and they sometimes already have marketing campaigns. So
Yeah.
you have to do what you can to to bring your style to it while still fitting in that box. Producers say that call these movies movies in a box because it's often like you have to do A, B, and C, and then who's the director? Sometimes they don't care. Sometimes they do. And it's not always just about bringing your style to it. Sometimes it's about how fast you can shoot or
Mm,
how much you can get the most that you can get out of your actors and crew in a short amount of time. On the flip side, there's other movies like the movie Affinity that the actor Marco Zaror and I did. We Marco had who's from the John Wick series. He spent years on this script. And the script itself, like it has story, but so much of it is a certain vibe. So it needed someone who really had a certain visual and mood to it, to their style. We
mhm.
spent probably 9 months, he and I, on Zoom, on WhatsApp, while he was, you know, shooting all over the world, creating like what would ultimately be the final movie. And he and I agreed on just about everything. Like it was really kind of an ideal producer and director experience. So that one, because we had the amount of time that we had, um, really came out incredibly close to what we were putting on paper and design wise throughout our pre-production process.
Mm.
um it really I think ultimately it's sort of you have to do what you can do to do the best work you can with what you're given for each
Yes,
particular job.
yes, yes. Do you think audiences, sometimes shape your
Mhm.
creative choices, even subconsciously?
Ultimately you're making these for an audience. So I would say definitely as far as what exactly they're shaping, I don't think sometimes. Like you go into it wanting to hit certain beats and hit certain moments. Like this is the moment where, if it's in a theater, hopefully everyone cheers. Um,
Mm.
but sometimes you just can't call those moments. Sometimes it's really a crapshoot, and there's this sort of other thing there that determines what an audience really reacts to, whether
Mm.
it's culturally,
Mm.
whether it's based on what's going on in the world. It's really
Of
hard to
course.
call
Mhm.
what people will respond to or resonate with. Like something could happen tomorrow that will make a moment in a certain movie really relevant and crowd pleasing in the future, but we don't know what that is.
Yes. Yes, of course not. So in such a fast-paced production world, is there much room, to take creative risks?
I think what you can do, and this especially applies to those movies in a box, you can do what you can to always bring your touch to a project. Even if it's something that you're doing as like a director or screenwriter for hire, um, or or something else. I think that even if you don't get something that you want in a movie, hopefully you're going to make another movie, and hopefully you can put it in that movie. So
Mm.
you can always do what you can to really put your touch on something,
Yes.
and hopefully it ends up in there.
Yeah. So you've directed multiple films in a single year.
Yes.
How do you mentally switch between projects without losing clarity? Because that's really amazing.
Hopefully you sleep and rest. Um, or if you're shooting somewhere that's not home, hopefully those first couple of days can be your reset if you're not,
Mm.
wiped out and jet lagged. I know sometimes, like I've flown from Los Angeles to Bangkok and slept for 24 hours straight.
Wow.
Um, and it always hits you out of nowhere. You'll get off the plane, go to your hotel, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm ready to work," and then you fall over and you're basically dead for a day. Um, a lot of it is really just mental preparation. You have to be able to anticipate things and be ready with your answers to a number of different situations.
Mm.
And hopefully your answers that you've mentally prepared are correct.
So yeah, it's difficult. What's something people don't see about how films really get made?
Um, I think even to this day with social media, a lot of people think it's a more lucrative profession than it is, or that is fancy, like, oh, those Hollywood people. Um, so many movies are really just made by a middle class, and it's just like this many people that make these gigantic movies, whether it's Marvel or anything else that Disney
Mhm.
may own.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's people look at it as like, oh, you're living your dream, or you're doing this, or oh, you're so Hollywood. Um, but really, you're kind of just on the ground grinding, just like anyone would be in a factory, for lack of a better metaphor. It's
Mhm.
it's it's really hard work. Um, it's really tiring work. You have to be wired a certain way for it. You have to have a certain degree of humility and self-awareness to really be able to work with people and reflect upon yourself as well, as opposed to like what as far as like, can I do better on this? Can I do better next
Um,
time? Can I do better now? What lessons did I learn from this movie to bring over to the next one? And I think to go back to something I just said, it's ultimately the answer maybe it's really not for everyone.
Mm.
It's something that can look very enticing to certain personalities and to very passionate people. But once you do it, you could realize that you're not cut out for it. And there's nothing wrong with
Because it
that.
drains you
Nothing wrong with
physically.
that whatsoever.
Mm, mm.
It's very survival motivated.
So, because the film industry, the film world can be very competitive, how do you navigate that?
Um, I'm just not competitive. I and
You were
you
always like that, Brandon?
no. You have to
No.
really learn to be that way. You have to train yourself to have a degree of confidence and not look at everyone as competition. And I used to see this a lot acting. Like I remember going to like dozens and dozens of auditions in New York City, and you see kind of the same group of people a lot.
Mhm, mhm,
And there would always be different groups. There'd be the people you see a couple of times and then you never see again because they burn out or they just, like I said, realize it's not for them. You see the people that are constantly selling themselves or pushing themselves on people like, I could do this. I have this lead role. I have this. Um,
mhm,
and observing this, I've realized that a lot of people are too self-driven and they don't realize that they need other people. For instance, you want to have the lead role. Well, what about everyone else in the scene? What about everyone else? Um, you need to have scene partners. You need to have someone
mhm,
pointing the
mhm,
camera. You need to have, your dialect coach, acting coach. It's not just about you. It's about how well you work with other people and how well you can execute that. Some people are fantastic at pitching themselves, but then they can't
mhm,
deliver. Some people are horrible at it, but then they're workhorses.
mm. Yes.
It's really to use that word humility again. Um, it's really, understanding that everyone else is just a person. Even if they annoy the shit out of you, they're still another person. You have to learn to deal with people and adapt to a million different personalities, and I think that helps keep you centered in a way where, you can be aggressive, you can be, competitive, but not in a toxic way, not in a,
Mm.
"I'm gonna tear people down" way, and that's really just not professional to be that way anyway.
No, no, no. Of course not. Have you been able to make friendships, lasting friendships in the industry?
Um, to be perfectly blunt, a lot of my longest friendships and my most transparent ones where the friendship doesn't require transactions have been
Mhm,
from people who were either musicians or people that I met 25 years ago in bands. I think a lot of that really boils down to that, you're on like a tour, you're on a bill, you're on a
mhm,
bill with like five other bands. And so your ability to pay yourself to make money, to put food in your mouth depends on every one of those bands coming together. Your audience depends also on the audience of these other bands. So you need
mm,
each other. And I also found that really inherently a lot of bands become it's easier for them to become fans of one another. Like, you sort
mm,
of it's like working with your heroes. You end up opening for a band that you really respect. Hopefully, they're worthy of that respect. And so I think just by nature, musicians or maybe rock, metal, whatever musicians, they need each other really to survive, and it's just sort of a kind of like, yeah, it's a terrible word to describe it, but like an incestuous thing where everyone
mm,
needs each other. Um, to go back to kind of the last topic, I think inherently a lot of people in other industries, such as movies, don't go into it with that mindset. Again, it's all the me, me, me. So because of that, I think it has just made sense that a lot of my longer friendships have been people from other bands. From there's guys that I've known 30 years that I can still pick up and talk to, like not a
mhm,
day has passed that I haven't seen in years. Um,
mhm.
sometimes with other filmmakers or actors or whatever, the friendship boils down to, well, what are you working on? Like all you do is talk
Yes,
about work,
yes.
and there's more to it than that. And it gets so exhausting talking about only work. Um, and it
Yeah.
becomes almost like you're showing each other your wallets. Like, this is how many
Mhm,
hundreds I
mhm,
have. Oh, you have one more than me.
mm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that a lot of that I don't have friends that are, um, from the movie industry. Like I told you, my friend, Louis, Mandalore,
Hmm.
fellow Greek, I've known him.
Yes.
God, we were working this movie Battle for Saipan, and we sat down looking at photos, and we're like, "God, we've known each other forever. Like, how does this happen?" Um, so you're still able to make connections with people.
Uh,
I've always found that the most, non-stressful, easiest friendships came from other musicians.
hmm, hmm. Do you think recognition and respect in this industry are tied more to talent or to position?
Ooh, that is a good one, and that's one that I wish more people would talk about. Um, it's both, depending on who you talk
Is
to.
it is it Brandon?
Yeah,
Because I don't really know.
yeah, so, eh, a lot of there's here's the situation. So, I went to a holiday party in the Hollywood Hills a few months ago. Ran into, people I've known for years and people that used to be like receptionists, basically, like executive
Mhm,
assistants um, who now work in development. Anytime
mhm.
someone tells you they work in development, it's really just a fancy word for receptionist. Anyway, um, these people really become very status driven, and maybe it's because their minds are still developing, they're still learning, they're still trying to get those traits to deal with people in a more humane or human basis. But to a lot of them it's more status driven, it's more position driven, as you said, which I don't think that's a way to build a long lasting career or a long circle. um
Mm.
I mean, you've had, our mutual friend Paz on, who probably has a
Yes,
lot to
yes,
say about this stuff, and a
yes,
lot of
yes.
the things that she talks about that happened to her years ago, this still goes on today. A lot of the people using, other people, monetarily, sexually, whatever, all of this still happens. It's really like a lot of the people that she dealt with have, a lot of them have gone away, but they're replaced by new people. Um, God, I wish there was an
Unfortunately.
easy
Yeah.
answer to this one, but it's really a so much of it is about just developing that thick skin where you can keep going. It's almost like going into a, a virtual war without, except the bullets are, other people's respect or jobs that you're being. Uh,
Have you ever had to step in or speak up, when someone was being treated
um,
unfairly?
there's I've sort of under the radar handed over information or other things that um got someone who uh had been accused of multiple sexual allegations removed from a movie.
Mhm,
um and I've the first time I was offered a six-figure salary to do a movie, the producer spoke about casting a 13, 14-year old in a sexual manner. I did not take that job. That movie, to my knowledge, has not been made. I
mhm.
think a lot of it is really making these hard decisions. Like, do I step up now, or do I, if I remove myself from the situation now, that will also be preventative for the future. Um,
It's
so
it's a it's a very difficult position to be
yes.
in.
So, like for instance, that job. Luckily, removing myself from it, I guess, ultimately helped stall the movie to where that situation didn't happen. Um, this other uh, thing, it's so weird. I seem to be sort of weaving back and forth between like super indie, and then I have my brushes with super not indie. Um, and so I've seen a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of the type of situations that you read about. that people like Paz and
Mhm.
McGowan and other people speak of. Um, it can be a lot. I hope that it goes away soon. You probably feel my anxiety coming through the app at this
I can
point.
totally understand how you feel, and of course, I want to thank you for supporting Paz. You know, her journey and her story,
You know,
and for sharing.
I had wondered what happened to her a while back, and so I thought, oh, she would be cool in like one of these kind of movies because she has like her very like distinct, unusual presence. So I
Mm,
tracked her down, um, and I'm like, oh, she's cool. She's a very eccentric, very interesting, but very nice person. And
mm,
these people, if they've been wronged in this way, that they deserve to be heard. And who cares what trouble they got into in the past? Everyone uses like, oh, she was drunk in a Lana Del Rey video. She's obviously a terrible person. No, that's not
yes,
how it
yes,
works. Um, Everyone who's been victimized in that way by people who shouldn't be in their positions, they deserve to be heard.
definitely, definitely. Um, Tell me, what is your best moment in the industry, and what is your worst?
um, I think I may have just said one of my worst, but
Yes,
ultimately
yes.
I removed myself from that. Um, because of my, I guess, double agent status, like going to these like super fancy things and then these super indie things. Like I've been um, groped by people before. I've been offered things, whether it's weird sexual things or weird
Mm,
drugs. I All that I do is this right here is caffeine. Um, I don't drink
me
or
too.
do any of it anymore. Yeah. When my daughter came along about 5 years ago, I stopped drinking. I, like, didn't want to have that in my life around her. So a lot of the worst are really just the same type of stories you hear other people talk about. All this stuff really happens. Um, as far as best, there's moments where you will be on set shooting, like, everyone, the rapport is great, the shoot's been great, and you get that moment that just really hits on camera.
Yeah.
um i used I used to have this really horrible habit of like running over to the set and like kind of looking over the DP's shoulder rather than watching the monitor. Just because I don't know, I would get excited about it. But now that I sit at the monitor and I'm watching what's on camera, like in mine and Marco Zaror's movie Affinity, there's this moment where he watches these surveillance or security videos about this person who is a clone and what their life has been. And we did this really long take where like Marco would listen to sad music and stuff like that before certain takes. But in this one in particular, I really, um, with his permission, because we like to know what each other are doing as a director and actor, I sort of walked him through certain moments that he was watching of this other character on screen. And he's looking at green, obviously. Like
Mhm.
what I see behind you now. He's not
Behind
actually
you.
looking at these moments because they weren't shot at this point, or maybe they were. I don't remember. Um, so he's watching this person's really manufactured life, and I would just tell him different scenarios and different things to visualize, different images. And we got that moment where this, 6'4" tough guy who kicked Keanu Reeves down the stairs, in France, cry
Mhm,
he becomes human. A tear comes down and he's vulnerable.
mm,
That's, to me, these are the things you really strive to accomplish where everything just hits the way
mm,
that it needs to. Um, I remember, like that take was done, everyone like applauds. Marco hugs me. We like walk off on set arm in arm. We're like, yeah, we did it. Those things are so satisfying. Um,
mm.
and
Magical moment.
I've been lucky enough to have a handful of moments like that, where it's just like, this is why I wanted to do this. This is why I've done all these crazy things in life to allow me to do this. Um, this makes it worth it.
Mm. If you could direct any story, no matter the budget or obstacles, what would it be and why?
Someone asked me this the other day. I this will never happen because the person that it would be about has said that they do not want any feature films made about them.
Uh-huh.
The hip hop group Public Enemy was big for me as a teenager, like in the
Oh,
late '80s, early '90s, a long time ago. After the movie Straight Outta Compton came out, which showed like NWA in their good moments and their bad moments, um, I'm like, if I could make a movie about Public Enemy, that would be just be awesome. And I know a lot about their lore, and I think like the two MCs, Chuck D and Flavor Flav, who everyone knows as this kind of character, like Public Enemy sort of came about because I believe it was they were driving moving trucks for Chuck's, like, uncle or dad or something, just
uh-huh.
freestyling, driving from New York City to Long Island when they were kids. I'm like, "That is an amazing story right there." Like, that even if you're not into hip hop or rap or whatever, that just is
Yes.
something that can connect to people. Um,
Yes.
but Chuck D has gone on record saying that there does not need to be a Public Enemy movie because there are documentaries that already tell the story. And maybe it's because this is someone I respect, but I would not want to do an unauthorized biopic, I think, as it's pronounced in Europe,
Mhm.
um, because it would need everyone would need to be, on the same page and in agreeance. So
Of course. Of course.
that would be the dream, but
Yes.
that one probably will not happen, and I respect their wishes.
You never know. You never
Yeah.
know.
Maybe he'll change his mind.
Why not?
Yeah.
Do awards feel like the real measure of success, or do you look for something different?
I don't care about awards whatsoever. I mean, I'll watch the Oscars, but sometimes it's just sort of chuckle, or because I know that a lot of voters don't actually watch the movies they vote on and just vote for who they like. Um, I understand how awards can be used to create someone's brand or validation, but as far as me, like personally, I really don't care.
Okay. And how do you personally measure success? How do you define success at this
Um,
point?
Being able to live your life doing something that you enjoy, even as stressful as I make it out to be, like, there are a lot of good moments, like, when we got Marco's character to be vulnerable. To me, to be able to do that and pay for your life and maintain like that, maybe it's maturity, but that's what makes it worth it, not getting a statue.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. I agree, Brandon. Yeah. So if everything stopped, let's say for a moment, no projects, no deadlines, who do you think you would be without the work?
I, tend to find my own things, so I would be the same.
You would be the same.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy doing?
Even when you're not, because months and months can go by between being on set in a location. Um, I still write music. In fact, my long dormant, band, who was very prolific in the early 2000s, is getting ready to do a reunion, which so many of our peers have done.
Mm.
That's the reason I do these long hikes so I can be in shape for it. Um, it's really just continually creating or just like enjoying what you can still do on your own.
Mm.
Hopefully that doesn't go away. I think maybe with things like what is it, Sora was defunded. And is now going away. I think hopefully that's a sign to people that you can still go out and create things on your own, whether it's like doing tattoos or um,
Of course.
music. I own
Mhm.
camera gear. I could go and shoot a movie right now. There's a million ways to really get that gratification, and it doesn't
Mm.
always have to be like someone else saying it's okay to do it.
Yes. And what are you working on any projects right now?
There are I have contracts for a couple of things. Often these
Mhm.
movies can take a while before they go. Um, I'm revising a movie, a script that sounds like I'm going to probably direct tonight, but nothing is official out in the world. Um, I signed to a movie that will shoot in, I think, Rome, but much later in the year because the way their tax incentive and government approvals, permitting, and everything in Italy is a very long process. Um, there's one that I have a contract for that will be shooting in the if you've ever heard of it, it will be shooting around the Salton Sea in Southern California, which is this very bizarre, very surreal place. Um, anyone who doesn't know what it is, you should Google it right now and go down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm and we're currently the reunited band towards the end of a brand new album, which we have to figure out what to do with. It's there's a lot of avenues these days where you can sort of put out music on your own without a label. So
Mhm, mhm.
it comes down to figuring out like, well, do we hit up a label? I know more labels now than I do when I, tried to become a rock star back in the day. Or do we just do it on our own? Um, but yeah, I like I said, these things don't mean I'm just gonna sit dormantly and not work on anything.
Yeah, definitely. So, Brandon, thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you the best of luck on all your projects. And to all of you out there, as we always say, ego is here, you are here, and that's enough.